We have lots to discuss here in today's video, including lots of NHL trade talk today. We've got the latest on a number of situations, including the St. Louis Blues, who appear close to being ready to enter sell mode, as well as the Nashville Predators. A couple of guys on the Preds that could be getting lots of attention include Jonathan Marchessault and pending UFA Michael Bunting. Could a reunion maybe in his former club be something we might see? Plus, could the Penguins actually end up flipping Stuart Skinner? Could Skinner be on the move again before the deadline? We'll discuss that possibility. Plus, comments from newly acquired Quinn Hughes in Minnesota. Scored a big goal in his first game. Talked plenty about the trade and what kind of how everything went down from his perspective. Plus, is there heat on GM Tom Fitzgerald in New Jersey? New reports tonight from Arthur Staple suggest there's lots of noise around this GM and could be a change coming. Plus, we have news from the NHL waiver wire, number of injury updates, and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in today's video. Another very busy news day. We got some news from the waiver wire, which we'll get into here in just a second. We're going to talk about Quinn Hughes, Buium, both making their debuts for their new teams and both making big impressions. On the waiver wire today, we had Lucas Reichel from Vancouver on waivers. We did find out this afternoon that he cleared, so he's been reassigned to Abbotsford in the American Hockey League, but there is some chatter around the player as well. Rick Dhaliwal, one of the Canucks insiders, has mentioned on his social media that he believes the Canucks are trying to trade Reichel, and now that he's cleared waivers, a trade might be more possible. Now, I've had this question asked me a lot over the years here on this channel. Why would a team, with an opportunity to grab a guy for nothing on waivers, pass that up only to trade for them? And the answer is quite simple, but I guess depending on how you think about it, you may not realize, but a lot of times, if the player's already cleared and then they make a trade, they don't have to start that player at the NHL level. So there is that. They could start him in the American Hockey League, call him up later. Or maybe they are willing to take the player, but they need something off their roster to make everything work from a cap perspective. Or you're also allowed to carry a max 50 contract, so sometimes that plays a role. And sometimes you just need to send something the other way. So it's just easier to let the player clear, and if nobody else takes him, you go back to that team, send them a little something that makes it work better for you, and then you get yourself a deal. So it doesn't mean it's going to happen, but Dhaliwal seems to think that they're trying and that there might be something in the works. We'll see if that comes through or not. But Lucas Reichel's time with the NHL club in Vancouver appeared to be done for the time being. I'm not sure where things go from here for the young forward trying to find his way in the NHL. Now, as I mentioned, it's been a big day. We had a massive day on Friday with some huge trades. We got some updates along the way here in a couple of those scenarios. One, we both saw Quinn Hughes and Buium both make their debuts. Of course, they were the centerpieces in that trade, with Quinn Hughes being the focal point going from Vancouver to Minnesota, and then Buium, of course, being one of the primary pieces going from Minnesota to Vancouver, along with Marco Rossi, Liam Auger, and a first-round pick. Buium, of course, his game in Vancouver against the Devils, and, of course, facing Quinn's brother Luke. Of course, Jack is out injured at the moment. Buium had a great first period and helped the team pick up the win today. Buium was the first defenseman in Canucks franchise history to have multiple points in his first period with the team. So in the first period of that game, he had a goal and an assist. His goal turned out to be the game winner. Great first impression for sure. Great big game for Buium to start off his career in Vancouver. And like I said, he has the potential to be a very dynamic player for them. He's only scratching the surface of what he's going to become. He's still quite young. He's won everywhere he's played. So to me, he is by far the biggest piece in that trade for Quinn Hughes. So he gets a big day. And of course, Quinn makes his debut with the Minnesota Wild. Today, the Wild picked up a big win over the Boston Bruins in large fashion. Quinn Hughes played a really strong game, scored himself a goal as well, got lots of ovations, and got well acclimated with the Minnesota fans. So obviously both players made a great first impressions with their new jerseys here today. Quinn Hughes did speak to the media as well. And was pretty open and well-spoken about everything that went down behind the scenes, the final days, whatever, during his time in Vancouver. He said after the last game he played with the Canucks against the Sabres that he pretty well knew at that point that it was his last game. Then the morning, Friday morning, before the trade was announced later in the day, he knew as well. He said he wanted to take the opportunity to get a chance to get up to New Jersey, New York area, so he could see his brothers, and then, of course, have a dinner with some of his closest friends on the Canucks who were traveling on a road trip. So certainly made sense for him to try to squeeze that all in. And, of course, Bill Guerin and the Wild went to pick him up and get him to Minnesota for today's game, which is why he wasn't available to be there for their home game against the Senators yesterday. But Quinn Hughes was pretty open about things, thanked the Canucks, obviously, for his time at the Aquilinis. Mentions Jim Rutherford a lot, doesn't really say much about Alvin, so if anybody really wonders who really runs that team, I don't think there's any question about that. But yeah, and he also, when asked about his willingness to stay and extend, of course, it was pretty clear from comments from Friday that Pat Brisson, his agent, and Quinn made no teams any guarantees that if they acquired him that he would extend, that they're going to take their time and make that decision. However, he said today that he's extremely open-minded to the idea that the Wild have an amazing core. He says it's close to Michigan, so it's easy to see family, so a little closer in Vancouver, so he likes that aspect of it. He also gave Bill Guerin credit for what he called sacking up to give up a lot of assets to bring him to Minnesota, so he said he'll be very much appreciative of that for showing how much Guerin had to give up and how willing he was to do it. He said this wasn't a lot of back and forth between the two teams. This was Guerin's first offer. He went big all in on the very first conversation with the Canucks, and they accepted the offer. So he's very much open to that, and really I would expect him to say that right now. Some people kind of thought the fact that how he says that they went all in and sacked up to make the trade, that some people think it's a shot at the Devils. I don't know about that. I'm not really sure we can confirm that at all. Would he love the idea of playing with his brother? Sure. Is this going to mean now that they're going to end up in Minnesota? I don't know. I mean, obviously they're both under contract with New Jersey for the next while here, so hard to say. Really hard to say what happens in the future there, but certainly something that will be interesting to follow. But Quinn Hughes will be a big part of the Wild for at least the next year and a half. That much we can say with certainty. But speaking of the Devils, they're a team that has not lived up to expectations this year. The fan base seems to be frustrated. They haven't had great goaltending. Jacob Markstrom has struggled. Jack Hughes has been out injured again with a freak accident, of course. According to new reports tonight from Arthur Staple, Arthur saying that he is hearing there is a fair bit of noise around GM Tom Fitzgerald. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to lead to a change or firing at the position for the New Jersey Devils, but he's lots of chatter, lots of noise around him. GM firings mid-season are not nearly as common as coaches, so it's difficult to say. He ponders if they did make a change, are they going to go internal or external? He says if you go internal, then clearly you're not really going to get a change in direction. If he goes with one of Tom Fitzgerald's assistant GMs, do they look outside? Mention some potential candidates, whether it be, do you bring in Brendan Shanahan as a new president and let him bring in a GM? So the whole new regime. Of course, Shanahan knows Sheldon Keefe well as well, so there's familiarity there. Not that really matters much, but I'm just saying if they did that, the coach would know Shanahan, which may or may not play a role here. He even mentions the idea of Rob Blake. They want to bring back Lou Lamoriello. Lou, technically, I do believe is still some sort of advisor to Islanders ownership, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know what exactly his role is per se. Darsh certainly has full control of hockey ops, but I'm going to wonder, Arthur Staple's a pretty well-respected journalist, a well-connected reporter, so if he's hearing that there's a lot of noise around the GM, you do have to wonder. Part of it could be, like I said, their inability to land Quinn Hughes, but more than anything, it's not just around Quinn. The GM is not going to get fired because he couldn't bring in the third Hughes brother. If the team was doing better and they were better situated in the standings and they weren't losing games that they should be winning and there's a lot of other things going wrong, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. It wouldn't be a big deal that he got Quinn or not, right? I mean, that's only one small piece of the puzzle here. But I mean, their inability to be able to be flexible enough to make that kind of trade is the problem. Being so tight to the cap, a lot of people point to contracts given out to older players, younger players not, obviously getting as much of an opportunity. You got guys like Palat and Hamilton very much underperforming right now. They're eating up a lot of cap space. Markstrom was given an extension, even though he hasn't really performed at his best either. So it's just a lot of questions around the team, around the GM. and will be an interesting scenario to watch. Like I said, of course, the Sabres were another team that we have talked about here in recent days as well. When they get back from their road trip, they are wrapping things up tonight with a win in Seattle, so that might buy Kevyn Adams and the team a little bit more time. They're still not in great shape standings-wise, but getting a couple of wins recently will certainly help keep them a little bit more closer to the pack. So we'll see where things go. But the Devils will be an interesting team to watch here as well. Some injury updates as well, and the roster moves around the league quickly. Then we'll jump into the rumor mill here. The Carolina Hurricanes today were able to activate Jacob Slavin. Of course, he's been out since October 11th, so that's great news for Carolina. Dylan Holloway in St. Louis was hurt in practice. Had to be helped off, didn't look good, expected to miss time. Obviously, that team is battling a lot right now, so that's unfortunate. The Kraken, of course, played the Sabres tonight, recalled Jacob Melanson. Jared McCann added to IR. The Kraken do have a lot of players feeling the flu bug here as well, apparently. The Vancouver Canucks had to add Elias Pettersson on injured reserve. This is Elias Pettersson, the centerman, not the young defenseman there. Marco Rossi was activated and able to play today. The Wild are going to be without Jonas Brodin for about a week as well. And Marcus Johansson was hurt in today's game. We're waiting an update to see if he'll be missing time or what the status is for him moving forward. But obviously, that's a lot to unpack just there between the injuries. We got the Quinn Hughes, Buium updates and debuts today. News from the waiver wire, New Jersey, Buffalo in the GM positions. And lots are expected here that we could see more activity now that we got some trades between the Oilers and the Penguins and the Quinn Hughes deal. I don't expect the floodgates to fly wide open here, but it wouldn't be shocking if we get some more activity this week, seeing that we're not that far away from a roster freeze. You'd expect with some teams already making moves, you might get some reactionary moves and some other things ahead of the roster freeze coming up here this coming weekend. So we're less than a week away from a roster freeze now for the holidays. The other important piece of information to consider in all this is that we know that some trades are going to be a little harder to do this year because they took away that double retention, at least in one time. You can still have double retention on a contract, but you can't do it all at the same time. There has to be 75 days apart. So if teams want to have players, to be able to consider that with, they obviously would have to have things kind of lined up. But if a team wants to acquire a player and you're thinking of flipping them by the deadline, it lines up that they'd have, if they do it before the roster freeze, they would have their 75 days before the trade deadline to be able to flip that player and retain again. So we could see a little bit of activity that might spawn some more conversations and some more urgency around getting some deals done. Now, in the rumor mill, we're going to take a look at a few things here. One, we'll start with Stuart Skinner and the Penguins. Frank Saravalli is reporting today that there is belief that the Penguins may not keep Skinner and that he may find himself on the move again later in the season. Now, he doesn't make a lot of money to boot, right? So, considering what he's making, we didn't need a double retention on that one. Obviously, Pittsburgh has his full contract, but if they want to retain on that to help make it even more attractive to another team, team could have a goaltender with a lot of playoff experience. Yes, I know he didn't win the Stanley Cup. Yes, I know some of his playoff numbers were, not great, but he had a lot of good performances in there too. We can't forget that. And if he doesn't have to be the main guy and he's more of an insurance or a tandem guy, I think he'd be better suited, to be completely fair and honest. And I don't know that teams are going to shy away from all that experience. So expectation is between Arthur Shelovs and Murashov that the Penguins are quite comfortable, and they're going to get Blomqvist as well. With all those younger goalies in the system, that Skinner being a pending UFA, are they going to want to pony up a new contract for Skinner? The expectation is probably not. He's probably going to move on. So we'll see. There's a number of teams out there that have been linked to goaltending changes. So we'll see, of course, where he possibly finds himself. It's hard to say right now where that could be, but we know there's a number of teams out there looking. The Blues are a team that seem to be getting closer to pulling the trigger here on a deal, that are ready to be accept the idea that they're sellers. Braden Shen, Justin Falk getting the most attention right now, of course, between being a centerman for Shen, right shot defenseman for Falk. They're two of the positions that have the most demand around them. Pierre LeBrun of TSN is also reporting today that Jordan Binnington, as of right now, who does have trade protection in his contract, has yet to be asked to waive. So as of right now, there's no belief that that's close or Hard to say if it'll happen or not, but I think in Binnington's case, I think the team will be a little bit reluctant to pull off the deal, but I mean, they're going to have to get something that they're going to, be happy with, right? And of course, he will have a say, and we don't know what Binnington's feelings are on that. So we'll see what happens. Of course, we know, he's been there a long time, helped them win their first cup in franchise history. So I'm sure there's some attachment in that sense from the sentimental standpoint. But at the end of the day, they've got Joel Hofer, who I think has been playing, maybe not having the best season either, but is capable of getting an opportunity, I think, at least on a short-term basis to see where things stand. But Binnington right now has not been talked to about waiving. That could come later, though. In Nashville, some teams, there are players to look at. One would be Michael Bunting, another Jonathan Marchessault. I know Kyprios was talking on his latest show, an article that he thinks Jonathan Marchessault is going to be the player that might be getting the most attention right now out of the Predators guys. So he mentions the Bruins as being a potential target. The only thing with Marchessault, of course, we know that these guys are going to have a say on where they go, and you're going to have to convince them to make less money too, because unless you're going to another no-tax state, their paychecks are going to be impacted, so it's going to be a little bit more challenging. But he does mention the Bruins being a team who I think would like to add some secondary scoring, might be interested in Marchessault. Michael Bunting, of course, as well, as I said, is another player to watch here. Bunting only is in the final year of his contract at $4.5 million. He's, according to reports, getting a lot of interest as well. Could be one of the first Predators to go, given that he's a pending UFA. And with them wanting to make changes, it only makes sense that he probably doesn't come back. I do wonder about his former team in Toronto. He had good chemistry playing with some of those top guys with the Leafs, whether it's Matthews, Nylander. He played a lot with Matthews during his tenure there. Helped him get his next contract. Unfortunately, the Leafs couldn't really afford, because of their cap situation, to bring him back. I think there was interest, but he priced himself out of there by having a good amount of success. Especially if Nashville were to eat a little bit of that money, is there a possibility that Toronto would bring back Bunting, just as somebody who would have some familiarity with some of the guys there. He's had success there before, hometown kid. We know he plays hard and can be that agitating factor that sometimes they lack. So, I mean, it's not a given that it happens by any means, but when you look at Toronto's needs, what they've been looking for, he kind of fits a lot of those descriptions and kind of checks a lot of boxes there, especially if Nashville's willing to eat even a little bit of money. If they could bring back Michael Bunting at, $2.75, $3 million, it might be a way for them to be able to, get some extra secondary scoring and bring back a familiar face. Maybe they swap Michelli for him as well. We know he's a player that's reportedly on his way out. If Toronto can find a deal for him, since things have not worked out there yet as well. But definitely lots more activity. I think we're going to be in store for a heavy week of rumors and some activity here, so stay tuned. We'll get it all covered. Lucas Reichel, like I said, another player with the Canucks trying to move. That could happen quickly. If it doesn't happen in the next few days, then I would think that maybe things are going to stall out and he'll have to play a little bit better in the AHL to generate some more interest and attention here. So we'll see what happens, but lots of things kind of in play. Now we'll see what we get before the end of this week when it comes to the roster freeze. Let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors on the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.